Your teenager doesn't hear your rules as rules anymore. They hear them as an opening offer. You said no screens after 9, and you meant it for almost 45 impressive minutes. Then they appeared in the doorway with wet hair, 12% battery, and a counteroffer. That's not defiance. That's your no sounding like customer service. And once a teenager learns your rules can be worn down, they stop hearing them as limits. They hear them as conversations. 6 habits that make your word meaningless, including one that feels like good parenting while doing the most damage, that decide whether your kids treats authority as something real or something optional. 1. The training program you started without knowing it. Your kid asks for something and you say no. They ask again, and you say no again. They ask a third time with a slightly sad face and a well-placed please. And everyone else's parents let them. And on the fourth ask, you cave because the emotional cost of holding the line just exceeded the cost of giving in. You just taught your kid that no has a price, and the price is approximately 4 attempts. Your teenager has accidentally become a behavioral scientist specializing in one subject, you. Your kid knows your parenting settings better than Netflix knows your viewing habits. They know exactly how many sighs it takes before you surrender. By 13, your child has essentially become a tiny hostage negotiator who smells emotional fatigue. Asking after good news improves approval odds by 37%. Never ask during tax season. Dad folds faster in public. Mom folds faster when tired. You accidentally turned your household into a casino. Every once in a while, persistence hits the jackpot, so now they keep pulling the lever. Your child now believes boundaries are scratch cards. You didn't raise a rebellious kid. You raised a very committed gambler. And until their prefrontal cortex finishes developing around age 25, they're relying on your structure to do the job their own brain literally can't do yet. Your limits are the scaffolding. And when the scaffolding moves every time they push it, they're building on sand. So, they're standing in the doorway at 10:43 p.m., holding a Stanley Cup and presenting a 6-point argument for why midnight is technically educational. And you think, why does everything have to be a fight? You taught them persistence beats authority. And unfortunately, they studied 2. The one that feels like good parenting while doing the most damage. And this is where good parents accidentally become collapsible, because somewhere in modern parenting, people started confusing loving your child with submitting to cross-examination by a 14-year-old. Modern parenting accidentally convinced a generation of adults that consistency and cruelty are the same thing. So now some parents would rather be emotionally exhausted than temporarily disliked. This one stings because it disguises itself as warmth. You want your kid to like you, and you want the house to feel open. So when they push back on a boundary, you flex, you bend, you let them stay up, and you adjust the limit because the look on their face when you said no made your stomach drop. Because kids do not experience inconsistent boundaries as freedom. They experience them as instability. A teenager with no stable boundaries is basically emotional parkour. They're throwing themselves against the emotional walls of the house, trying to figure out whether any of them are load-bearing. Deanna Baumrinn's research found that kids raised with high warmth and low structure feel loved but directionless, which sounds sweet until your 15-year-old starts running the house like an exhausted assistant principal with no actual authority. The kid who gets everything they want often becomes the kid secretly panicking in the back seat because nobody's holding the wheel. My kid gave me the face, and I folded faster than a lawn chair at a church picnic. One sigh, one tiny eye roll. Suddenly, I'm renegotiating bedtime with somebody who still forgets where they left their shoes. And the quiet part nobody talks about? Kids with constantly flexible parents often describe feeling anxious, because when the person who's supposed to be in charge keeps deferring to your 13-year-old opinion, part of their brain's wondering, if nobody's actually steering this thing, who's keeping me safe? 3. The habit your kid watches every single day. You tell your kid, honesty matters more than anything, and then they watch you lie to their aunt about dinner. We have plans. Your plans were elastic waist pants and Thai food. You tell them to respect their teachers, and they hear you mock Mrs. Patterson's email in the kitchen like a stand-up set. Your kid is standing 3 feet away, quietly recalibrating everything you've ever said about respecting the people in charge of their education. You tell them to put the phone away at the table, and you're scrolling Instagram between bites of lasagna like you're defusing a bomb. Kids don't listen to what parents preach. They listen to what parents repeat. Children can smell hypocrisy the way sharks smell blood. Kids aren't tracking your words. They're tracking the gap between your words and your behavior with the attention of an FBI profiler who's also going through puberty. You think they're not paying attention because they're staring at their phone. Meanwhile, they're building a psychological documentary about you. Brain imaging studies found inconsistent discipline doesn't just confuse kids emotionally. Their brain literally adapts to unpredictability. Your habits are the family religion. Children are anthropologists with house keys. Respect authority stops meaning authority is worth respecting and starts meaning authority is a performance adults put on when other adults are watching. And that's the lens they carry into classrooms, jobs, and eventually their own parenting. Your child lives inside your habits longer than they live inside your rules. 4. The lobbying operation running out of their bedroom. Nothing destroys authority faster than parents publicly correcting each other. The second your kid watches one parent overrule the other, the house quietly turns into a legal system instead of a family, with a very corrupt lobbyist with AirPods. By age 12, they're basically running opposition research. They know exactly which parent still has emotional fuel left in the tank. Kids adapt fast. Frighteningly fast. Sleepover permission goes to mom after dinner when she's relaxed. Extended curfew goes to dad while he's distracted by work emails. Money for something you'd both say no to gets asked of one parent with a claim that the other already approved. And by the time you two compare notes, the thing is already done. That's a lobbying operation running out of a bedroom decorated with fairy lights and a Minecraft poster. And the skill set it builds travels straight into school, friendships, and workplaces. Kids who grew up learning to exploit the gap between authorities never learn to engage with authority itself, because scanning for the weak point is what worked at home. Kids don't break weak rules. They ignore them. 5. Why your kid stopped believing you mean it. If you don't clean your room, you're losing your phone for a week. And the room stays messy, the phone stays in the pocket, and life continues as if nothing was said. Your teenager didn't hear a consequence. They heard a podcast advertisement. Terms and conditions may not apply. Now, every future warning runs through their internal credibility filter, which just updated its settings to probably bluffing. At that point, your kid stops listening to your rules and starts checking the emotional forecast. Cloudy, with a 70% chance of mom says yes. An inconsistent no eventually sounds identical to a maybe. And this doesn't stay in childhood. Kids raised around fake consequences become adults shocked when real consequences finally arrive. A boss who actually fires people. A partner who actually leaves. Because home taught them that words and consequences were two completely separate departments. The quieter version's worse. It's the rules nobody argues about because nobody actually follows them. Bedtime is 9:30 and everyone goes to bed at 10:15. These rules don't get broken with a fight. The rules don't explode. They decay quietly, like abandoned mall food courts. Nobody even remembers enforcing them anymore. Tuesday night you and Saturday morning you are basically different governments, and your kid has already mapped the entire schedule. Quick note, every study I've referenced is linked in the description. I actually read them this time. You're welcome. 6. What they actually want and will never tell you. Teenagers push boundaries for the same reason toddlers look back before jumping into a pool. They need to know somebody's still watching. Teenagers act like they want unlimited freedom. What they actually want is evidence that somebody stronger, calmer, and less emotional than they are is still holding the wheel. The scariest thing for a teenager isn't a strict parent. It's a parent whose no feels like a coin flip. A predictable parent feels safe even when they're strict. An unpredictable parent feels unsafe even when they're kind. A teenager once told a counselor something that deserves to be on a billboard. "I wish my mom would just say no and mean it. When she changes her mind every time, I feel like nobody's actually in charge." Children trust predictable people. What they want is a wall that stays where you put it, so they know how far's too far without having to find out by crashing. What it looks like when you get it right. Say fewer things, but mean every single one. 5 limits you enforce consistently carry more weight than 21 you enforce when you feel like it. When you set a consequence, hold it even when their face makes you want to fold. Especially then, because that's the exact moment they're learning whether your patience was strength or weakness. And on the days you get it wrong, say so. "I shouldn't have let that slide. The rule still stands." The same person can hold a line and own a mistake in the same breath. And that's the kind of adult they actually want to become. Because eventually every teenager asks the same question in different disguises. "Are you still strong enough to stay calm when I stop being easy?" And when the answer becomes yes, something inside them unclenches. Your kid mistook your patience for weakness. That's fixable. But it only changes one held limit at a time. If this landed, watch why teens stop trusting their parents. This is how the trust breaks. Because long before teenagers stop listening to their parents, they start deciding whether their parents mean what they say.